Welcome to the 6th episode of Eastermall 2022 Recaps from Reality TV Warriors. My name is Michael Armstrong, and joining me as always is the Canadian who always has something very important in his hands, Logan Saunders.
Good evening.
Good evening. It's been a bit of a wet and wild day in Phuket, as you were saying to me before we started recording.
Yes, lots and lots of lightning strikes earlier. Very rude interruption to our stay at the beach. We hustled out of there. We ducked underneath an area with bars and restaurants before we could head back home. And then right after we got back, another storm happened. And then that storm ended, and another hour or so later, another storm broke out. Now it's all quiet, so my apologies to the listeners, but you will not be hearing lightning strikes in the background while we record.
I am disappointed in you. And I would say this week was a much better episode than 2 weeks ago was. I think I preferred it to last week as well. But a completely and utterly unsurprising boot.
They really, if you take notes as to what people are saying during the quiz, the one person who didn't announce who their suspects were was the person who ends up being executed at the end of the episode. So as soon as that quiz section ended, I wrote down my notes, well, that's an embarrassing way for that guy to be executed.
Technically, it was 2 people, because Laetitia didn't say who she suspected either, but also she was exempt.
Yeah, that's like the only person who was eligible to be eliminated didn't announce who their suspect was. And that's when you knew it was game over for Sahil.
And I do also have to point out that in week 1, when Sahil started entertaining us so much, I predicted that he would go home in the Josh traditional spot of either 5th or 6th.
You did. You get points for that.
He went home in 6th. So I wasn't surprised. I was mainly relieved that it wasn't someone from my team, being perfectly honest. But it is a massive loss to the season entertainment-wise.
I know what got him executed. It was the fact that he wasn't wearing any funny shirts this week.
It is. He was just Hawaiian casual this week, and it screwed him.
There was no Space Jam or Girl Scouts tributes or Titanic. Was that the other one?
Titanic was another one as well, because Kim actually, when she was going towards the Russian submarine base, shouted, "I'm king of the world."
Yeah. And I'm thinking, do you really do that on a small speedboat? Doesn't have to be a bigger boat to pull the Titanic quote.
I mean, I think if you're at the front of any boat, you probably do it if you're tempted to, being perfectly honest.
That's what Michael Scott would do. Jim Halpert would bet his entire month's pay on Michael Scott saying, "I'm king of the world," whenever at the front of a boat.
And to begin with, before we even get into the episode, yet again, we do have a listener complaint of the week, although this is less of a listener complaint of the week and more of a listener actually explains how a challenge from last week works of the week. Because after the episode went up on Wednesday, Katya did message us on Instagram to explain about how the first challenge last week could have actually been won with €2,000, because if you remember, I said it was physically impossible. They could only win 1,750 in the glider challenge. And the way that it could have been won with €2,000 is if they doubled. If both Frazier and Sahil had chucked their pink bags to the same person, then they could have doubled it. And I'm very surprised, between a Canadian and someone who loves Tim Hortons, neither of us spotted the double.
That's true, though. They could have... Trudeau. Yeah, if you throw the 2 bags of the same person, that's extra money you can bag.
I would argue that it is not abundantly clear that could have happened.
Yeah, it's not even clear, that it could even be within the confines of the rules that you could throw 2 doublers at the same person.
No, because you would assume that before that challenge, Sahil and Frazier got together and said, "Who are you throwing it to? Who are you throwing it to? Let's try and agree to not throw at the same person to confuse them."
Or if they really wanted to earn money, say, we'll both throw it at Thomas because we both know he cannot be the mole. He's the only one who consistently tries to earn money for the pot.
Yeah, it's a weird way to make a maximum, is what I will say. Thank you for actually flagging that with us, Katya. But it is a weird way for them to do it, because it requires a lot of collaboration from Fraser and Sahil, who, between them, not particularly known for their collaboration in this season.
Considering they're blaming each other for the stolen phone.
Yeah, as Fraser says at the end of the episode, Sahil was an incredibly frustrating player, but a friend for life.
Do you remember Celebrity Mole Hawaii, how Kathy Griffin would react whenever somebody was executed?
It's ages since I've seen the season, to be honest.
Yeah, when Stephen Baldwin got executed, they censored, but I
Spoilers.
think, yeah, for a season that aired 17 years ago or longer. Kathy Griffin says, "Oh my God, it's too bad he went home, but my God, he was such an asshole." Nice guy, but a complete asshole. And she just repeats it once or twice, and everyone has no idea how to react to that.
I know we're unlikely to ever get to the celebrity moles on the historians, but Kathy Griffin was perfect casting for that show.
There are compilations on YouTube you can find that people have edited just to include Kathy Griffin's clips from it. I think without Kathy Griffin, I don't think anyone would have bothered with that season.
So previously, Fraser and Sahil disappeared, then flew over the others as they tried to free themselves and earn money for the pot, while Kim took a mud bath and Laetitia failed to take the doubler that was thrown to her. The mole phone went missing and appeared in Sahil's hand, while the mystery of the missing €250 continued. At a physical challenge, the team gambled it all to win big, but it was Treasurer Healer whose luck ran out, and she was sent home. And they are still in surrender. Rick says that nobody expected that 3 candidates would make it to final 6, still with exemptions. In previous years, lots of money would be paid for those exemptions, but the 3 with the exemptions, Frazier, Laetitia, and Sahil, seem confident on their suspicions and probably still won't play them. Healer transferred the pot to everyone, who vowed to find the missing money, but that could just be a small gesture, as he still has a €5,000 bounty on his head if he's the mole. The missing phone is still confusing to the team, but there is another call coming on the way to Porto Palermo. And we've not done this for a couple of weeks. Do you want to have a crack at the episode title?
Oh, it's a bit tougher than last week's.
This one came up, and I immediately was like making Logan try and say that one.
What would that be? Would that be like golf the wagon? Golf the wagon?
According to Google, and please correct me, any Dutch or Belgian people listening, it's halfbewegening.
Oh, that makes sense with the W. Golfbewegening. Yeah, I can see that. Golfbeweging.
I quickly Googled it before we started recording so I could seem impressive, and like I know you're Dutch.
I think you're adding an extra. I think you're adding an extra syllable in there, Michael.
That's just the Dutch language. Halfbewegening, which is wave motion in English.
Yeah, I got the wave motion part. I can say that.
It is, to quote one of our episode titles for Amazing Race 31, The Motion on the Ocean. It's day 11, and Thomas asked Frazier where the phone was, but she had no idea. Sahil says that he'd kind of forgotten that he had it, but then it starts ringing in his bag in front of Kim and Thomas.
It's the Rickophone.
I mean, seriously, did Sahil think he was going to get away with this? It's quite obvious that it's going to ring at an inopportune moment for you.
How did he not hide it in a better spot?
How did he not hide it in someone else's bag?
Or have the phone on silent if you're in a bus ride?
I presume production told him he couldn't have it on silent in case Rick does need to get in contact with them, but still.
Yeah, you just cut to Rick being all annoyed saying, "Oh, no one's answering this phone. That's the 10th time we've tried to call this number."
Sahil must think that I'm just butt dialing him.
Yeah. Doesn't he have caller ID? Who else could have this number? Or it would have been even better if Sahil picked up the phone and Rick pretended to be a telemarketer or one of those scammers you see on the Kit Boga or Scammer Payback YouTube channels.
What they should have done is just, as soon as Sahil picks up, connected him to a Chinese takeaway in Amsterdam who have no idea what he's on about.
So would that be chop suey or sweet and sour pork, Sahil? You know how much people in Albania love to eat Chinese food.
So Rick tells them that they need to form 2 groups, one group of 3 people who want to make sure money is earned, and one group of 3 people who are not afraid of the dark or water and want to bring in the money. And what I love about this scene more than anything else is that usually they send Rick to a cafe or something to make these calls. He's literally in the passenger seat of a car. They literally have to do it while he's on the way to the location to beat the contestants, rather than finding a cafe nearby or whatever. Because I would be very surprised if Porto Palermo did not have a cafe they could have done that from.
Yeah, maybe they went through a McDonald's drive-through and they didn't think it would be that wouldn't fit into the atmosphere or that wouldn't fit into the atmosphere of what V is the Mall should look like. It doesn't look presentable for Rick to be going through a drive-through and yelling, "I want a cheeseburger and a Diet Coke and French fries."
It would be very entertaining if the call was interrupted by someone saying, "Would you like fries with that?" Or if Rick was just chowing down on a McFlurry whilst he was making the call.
"Would you like ketchup or mayonnaise, sir?" "Of course I want mayonnaise. I'm not American." "What nationality do you think I am, you son of a bitch? Haven't you seen Pulp Fiction?"
So Thomas and Kim then interrogates Sahil over why he had the phone, and he's a terrible liar. In the same way that Kim is later in the episode. She's a terrible liar.
Yeah, Sahil just says, I don't know how the phone ended up here. Are you sure this is where I got it from?"
I know I was the one person in the position to actually be able to steal it from Frazia's bag, but it definitely wasn't me. I'm being framed.
Kim, weren't you the one that answered it?
But then for some reason, they all agree that Kim gets to take credit for it.
It's such a bizarre turn of events there. Sahil somehow gets away with this lie. When he had two witnesses, they saw him grab the phone out of his bag to answer it.
Yeah, this entire scene was just odd. They basically decide that they're going to keep the same groups that they are in the vans, and that Thomas, Kim, and Sahil will be doing the dark and wet thing, and that Laetitia, Averon, and Frasier will be making sure that they can earn money.
Yeah, Sahil wanted the groups to stay that way because he suspected both Thomas and Kim, the two people who I absolutely do not suspect.
And also who he ends up going home. Assuming that he suspected Thomas and Kim still, he ends up going home.
Producers and editors are not helping me this season. I just have two suspects. Just give me one scenario where I can rule one of the two out.
Yeah, I'll be perfectly honest. The past couple of boots have been absolutely devastating for me because I'm not ruling out suspects. I need a concrete suspect to go home soon, preferably Kim, just because the world will burn if Kim goes. As much as I love her as a character, the level of suspicion that she has in the Netherlands is rather dangerous. And it would be so funny next week if she goes home and I just get a message off Bram going, fuck! And I want to get into this in this episode anyway, because at the final five, to me, there is only really one person I suspect now. Kim is still by default my second person because I suspect her the most of the other four. But I really only suspect Laetitia. And I think there is a massive difference between a palatable mole and a plausible mole. Laetitia is a plausible mole right now, and I think she would be a palatable mole, and I think everyone in the final five would be a palatable mole, apart from Kim. Kim has not done nearly enough to sabotage publicly to make her a satisfying mole for me right now.
Would it be as egregious as Rowan being the mole?
Oh god, no, because Kim's actually got personality. Kim is a fun character, but would be, as it stands, 6 episodes in, an unpalatable mole. Whereas Yaron was a terrible character and is an unpalatable mole even after the season when he was allegedly the mole and did less sabotaging than the person who won the season.
It was very odd that Sahil gets away with the phone lie, and then he's the one that wants to tell the other group that the two groups have already been determined and that there's no way they can make any switches. It's impressive that he's able to get away with both absurd suggestions. Because the other group didn't really interrogate him too much or interrogate Kim, Sahil, or Thomas into saying, "What? Usually we get to choose our own groups. You mean we can't switch? We always switch. That's our routine. Somebody gets angry and wants to be paired up with somebody else, so they switch."
I think it's got to the point of the season where everyone's just like, yeah, do what you want, Sahil. We know you got the choice, but we don't really care anymore.
Could it also be that everyone is locked into their suspect, so they don't have as much investment into what the groups are anymore? They feel that they have felt everybody out and they're sticking with their one or two people for the remainder of the season?
I think so, yeah.
Because everyone just suspects two people now, right?
Yeah, everyone is down to 2 suspects as far as we're aware.
Yeah, no one's brave enough to go straight ticket on one person, which is quite rare for Venom. It shows you how much smarter the contestants are getting, or it took 22 years for them to figure out, maybe I wait a little bit longer to go a straight ticket on one person.
Do you think it is in part due to the fact that the structure of this season means that with 11 people, there has to be an elimination every week? Do you think that that is playing into the strategy of the season a bit more? The fact that they know that there is no chance that there is going to be a buffer.
That they have to play like it's going to be their last quiz. It could be that no one wants to take that risk.
The fact that there is an elimination each week means that people play a lot more conservatively than they would if they thought, we're getting to final 6, final 5, there's probably a non-elimination around the corner.
Or there's going to be a twist where only 2 or 3 people are up for execution. If the other person has the correct suspect, then I'm absolutely screwed, even with splitting between 2 people and getting 10 out of 20 on the quiz.
Yeah, because we got the answer at the end of this episode to my question from a few weeks ago with the route of exemption, where Laetitia didn't need to sit the quiz because there was no black exemption in play anymore. So that means that it was a guaranteed elimination. And in week 4, I did speculate whether, if the person who got red screen played their exemption, whether it would pass on to someone else or whether they would just cancel the elimination. By the look of things, they would still eliminate someone if it had happened this week.
Yeah, they haven't hinted at any sort of alternative non-elimination or double elimination twist whatsoever.
We are getting an elimination every single week by the look of things. And actually, by the look of things, next week's going to be very interesting because they're going back to a twist that they have done in the past. But we're going to get to that because it is a really, really mean way to do the exemption for the finale. So in the van, the other 3 speculate who has the phone. Laetitia is so calm, she just knows it's Sahil. She knows that of those 3 people, if it's anyone, it's going to be Sahil. But when they meet up, they're told that it was actually in Kim's bag and that the teams were already decided when Rick rang. They know that that's a lie, though.
Laetitia sees through that a bit too easily.
Yeah. It's almost like she was told. Rick meets everyone, Laetitia and Fraser, at Castle Porto Palermo. They can earn up to €3,500 in this challenge. All they have to do as a team is find the 4 keys hidden in the castle that will unlock boxes of bows and arrows. The arrows have codes on them to unlock cash chests, which the other team will use when they do their bit of the challenge. They will be on speedboats in the harbour, and the team have a total of 1 hour, of which the speedboat team will need at least half an hour. To open the gate of the fort, they have to first find the 2 daggers hidden in the ground for some reason.
It was very smooth editing with this task. Unusually smooth editing by Venom standards. The Mole Belgie you'd have Jill DaCosta come in with narration at the appropriate times, and Venom producers clearly learned from Jill's there. And they waited till halfway through, and then Rick explained the second half of the challenge. Well done by Venom to learn from other versions of the Mole.
We've had 2 major complaints this season, and by we I mean mainly me, let's be honest. One is the absolutely opaque challenges. The fact that they don't tell people how to win the challenges at the start has really got on my nerves in the past couple of years. This challenge is much better. The other one is weird cash amounts. Sadly, we are going to have to get into that later in this episode, because the second challenge has another weird cash amount that gets on my nerves. Once they are inside, they have to take flaming torches to find 4 keys. And I do also have to point out a deliberate reference that they love to go back to in the Mole, which is that the Mole thrives in the dark. They always love to say at the end of a season that the Mole is going back underground. The Mole always thrives in the dark, which is very interesting that this challenge especially has them going into very dark rooms.
Especially when my 2 suspects are the ones who go into these dark rooms.
How would you play this as a Mole, do you think? Would you want to be in the first team or the second team?
Well, you need the keys to obtain the arrows, right? And then the arrows are what give you the codes to unlock the chests at the end of the challenge. So I presume if you only find 2 or 3 out of the 4 keys, you've already capped the ceiling on how much money can be earned for the challenge. You've already kept a significant amount of money out of the pot.
On the surface of it, you would probably want to be in the second team because you get control over where the team actually earn money. But I think as a Mole, the sensible option is to go for the first team, because you are in control of the time. The more time you take searching the castle for the 4 keys, the less time the other team have to collect the actual boxes.
Yeah, and you control the maximum amount that can be earned for the challenge, too.
And Rick put a big emphasis when he was talking to Laetitia, Everon, and Frazier to say, make sure the other team have enough time. That is where a mole would place themselves given the choice, I think.
Yeah, because if they take too long, that's not enough time for the other 3 to get all the chests and be able to unlock them.
No, and it's not a short journey from Castle Porto Palermo to the submarine base.
To the James Bond inspired submarine base.
The Porto Palermo Tunnel is its actual name, and spoilers, Wikipedia doubts its veracity as a Russian submarine base. Wikipedia thinks that is utter bullshit.
It's just a rumor or urban legend.
Yeah, it's an urban legend by the look of things. I did a quick bit of Googling on it yesterday. It's an urban legend that it had any Russian submarines in it. It had a few Albanian ships in it, but none of them were submarines, and none of them were Russian.
Yeah, it's where the real life version of the Hunt for Red October happened.
Yeah, there's a heavy bit of citation needed on the Porto Palermo Tunnel Wikipedia page in Wikipedia language. So Laetitia finds a key. She says in confessional she grew up wanting to be Ronya the robber's daughter, so it took her back to being a little child. She finds a second one that Fraser overlooked with 52.5 minutes left. Fraser then overlooks another key in a very dark room, and Everon finds the third key. They realise that there is one more key to find in the dark room that Fraser overlooked, but they agree to go up to the roof and help the other team find money instead.
I think that 4th key was found.
I think it was as well.
I think that 4th key was found quickly and shoved into somebody's pocket.
As I said, the mole thrives in the dark. What is the easiest way for the mole to do anything this challenge? It's either dick around in the dark for too long or start hiding the keys because they're so small. I would probably either, as a mole, go into that dark room and say, oh no, there's nothing there, and have pocketed the key, or I would just move it. I would move it to another room that had already been checked and already had a key found in it.
And I think with a castle like that, you can hear if somebody else is coming close to you. And especially with lit torches, you can suddenly see a burst of light if anybody is remotely nearby.
The other bit of this as well is the fact that, from a production standpoint, those 4 keys have to be found by someone because they have to be recovered. Otherwise, someone's just going to go to Castle Porto Palermo and get themselves a souvenir.
I don't think they'll figure out what to do with that key, though.
No, but as a mole fan, if you were going to Albania next week and you had the chance to go to Castle Porto Palermo, would you explore it to try and find that 4th key? Of course you would, because you'd have a money can't buy souvenir. But from a production standpoint, those 4 keys probably have to be found by someone. Therefore, if the mole's in that team, the mole was probably instructed to pick up that 4th key.
And then if you're a mole fan too, you get some scuba diving equipment, and then you dive underneath near the castle to see if there are any decommissioned Russian submarines that are buried at the bottom of the water.
If you're really lucky, you'll find a submarine steering column.
Or an abandoned nuclear missile.
So once they unlock their arrows, 2 each for Fraser and Laetitia, and 3 for Everon, they have to aim them at a boy in the water for the others to collect. And surprisingly, all 3 of them actually do pretty well with their aiming.
I think it's because everyone was watching each person fire the arrows. It's not like collecting keys where you're completely unaccounted for. Here you're in plain view of everybody, so you can't do anything over the top in terms of a sabotage. So there are 5 people around you who can see what you're doing at all times.
Yeah, it's too public a sabotage opportunity to start accidentally firing them badly, I think. Something I thought that was very interesting, because obviously I have massive tunnel vision on Laetitia at the moment. Earlier in the season, it was established that she loves Laser Quest and that her friends call her the Laser Quest Queen. And yet she'd never shot before, she said in this episode. I would be really surprised if that is true.
You mean never shot a bow and arrow?
Yeah.
I was really hoping somebody would put on a Mark Twain costume when they pretended to do the bow and arrow shot, like in Robin Hood Men in Tights. He gets another shot.
I don't know. I think I've had this before with mole candidates where I'm suspicious of them because they always seem a little bit disingenuous. And I think that might be what it is with Laetitia.
You find her disingenuous?
Yeah, I always feel like in confessional she's not telling us the whole truth. And it's a great way to sniff out a mole, but sometimes you just have disingenuous people.
Do you think she's just saying those things to be entertaining for the viewers at home?
Maybe a little bit, because she has got a lot of airtime in the past couple of weeks. She was very, very quiet in the first couple of weeks, and now we're actually getting a proper feel on her. I think she either wins or is the mole.
Now she's talking about being this Rania person. Who is Rania?
It's like Dutch Pippi Longstocking, I think.
Interesting. Interesting.
I think she's basically Anna Varanya Gables.
Rania. And Rania Gables. Where she's going to play around in red soil and grow potatoes and go to church.
Yeah. But I'm getting the read on Laetitia that she's either winner or mole right now. She is my main suspect, and she probably will be until she gets eliminated right now, I'll be honest.
One person who I cannot get a grasp on still is Freysia. She's still the one mysterious element in this season. We've been saying she's been under-edited since the very first episode, I think.
Yeah, I think with Frasier, she's just very competitive. I think it's a very similar thing to Rocky last year. And you suspected Rocky last year because she always seemed a bit too good to be true. And you couldn't put your finger on her personality. And I think it's a lot of the same thing with Frasier here, being honest. I was thinking earlier about our suspicions last year and how in both Vidum and Belgia, we were on completely different suspicions in the last week. It got to the final reveal, and we were completely opposing in terms of suspicions, which never happens. Usually, we come together by the end of it. And I think with Rocky, it was just a similar thing to Frasier. You just couldn't put your finger on her. You just didn't know what story they were trying to tell with her. And I think it's probably the same with Frasier.
Yeah, sometimes people who are just very, very competitive may not necessarily make for the most dynamic of confessionals because that's not where their focus is. Their focus is just on doing well in the challenges.
Yeah. And I think with some of her behaviour with Sahil, when he was obviously moulding to troll her a little bit, you could see that competitive side come out.
That's a good point. That's a flaw in my judgment.
That's what I think with Frasier. I think it's more that she's just competitive rather than suspicious right now. And I know I've had her in my suspicions in the first couple of weeks, and yeah, the first 4 weeks actually, I had her in my suspicions. But I think it is just that she's very competitive rather than suspicious right now for me. She's still no Thomas. Thomas is still bottom.
Yes, Thomas, he's trying to. He's always doing well. I'd be floored if Thomas is the mole. It'd probably be the most shocked I'd be with someone being the mole.
He's the anti-Jochen in that he's definitely not the mole, but also he's definitely doing far too well to be the mole. Whereas Jochen was really bad at challenges and really not suspicious.
It'd be equivalent to if Lloyd was revealed to be the mole in Belgia.
So the other team then speed off to unlock the cash chests. They're off to a quote-unquote former Russian submarine base carved into the cliffs of Porto Palermo, which is actually Porto Palermo Tunnel.
Yeah, I remember all of those abandoned Russian submarine bases from Game of Thrones and Miami Vice. That's what Sahil said anyway.
It's a really cool location to have a challenge in. It's also utter horseshit, the story they're trying to tell about it being a Russian submarine base. It wasn't.
They're going to throw in that rope magnet, and when they pull up the rope, Vladimir Putin is going to come up instead of one of the chests. And then you have those two guys with a stick just pulling at Putin to get him back in the water.
I think the other thing about this bit of the challenge as well is it does feel very Belgia in that normally if there was a Vidum challenge where they said, oh, these things are going to be defended, you'd have like people actually stealing them and things. In this one, you have the lifeguards from hell not even trying to steal the chest, just trying to throw them back in the water, just irritating the contestants. And there is a really big difference between that when you're coming up with challenges like this. And I love the slightly antagonistic option of just, oh, we're going to throw it back in rather than we're going to take it away from you.
Just mildly impede your progress.
Yeah. And something I noticed is the fact that the quote unquote lifeguards had earpieces as well, because one of them was wearing a receiver on his back. So production would definitely round the corner just going, go on, steal it now. You know you can. You know you want to. It'll be good fun. Production were actively trolling the contestants via these lifeguards, and I love it. It's the best way to do this sort of challenge.
It's even funnier when you think that these two lifeguards could just be guys they found on the beach and say, "Hey, are you two guys doing anything? We know there's not a whole lot of opportunities to do really, really fun things in a tiny town in Albania." And the two guys are like, "No, we're not really up to much. Might smoke some weed on the beach, and that's about it." And just say, "Okay, well, would you like to hold a stick and just annoy the hell out of some Dutch people for the next couple of hours?" Sure.
Make no bones about this as well. This challenge would not have worked with another cast. The fact that Thomas has to do this challenge and gets frustrated with these people, the fact that Sahil has to do this challenge and gets frustrated with these people, absolutely elevates this sub challenge. Anyone else, and I think it would fall flat, and I'd just be like, who wants to watch a fishing challenge? But you're literally watching people magnet fishing. That is not interesting. But because the lifeguards find people that they love to annoy in Sahil and Thomas, that makes this challenge work.
I noticed earlier that everyone said a slightly offensive quote during this episode. When referring to Phrasia and Laetitia, he said, "Where are those bitches?" And I was thinking, man, I think somebody just pulled their music from Spotify over that.
Yeah, I didn't even twig that.
Yeah, that was one of the quotes in there. I think it was after when I think it's when they're running around.
Do we need to cancel everyone from the podcast?
I think we just need to convince everybody associated with the mole to pull their music from Spotify. And in fact, I think it just came through that Willie Summers pulled his music from Spotify over this.
Did he actually?
No.
I was going to say, I don't think that Willie Summers would care enough.
Man, we need to get Jill to message Willie Summers to make a public statement saying he's going to pull his music from Spotify. That would make my day.
I think I just had a no Logan experience. So everyone sees the lights of the chests. Kim stays by the entrance where she saw 2 or 3 together. Sahil hooks the first one and it surfaces, and Thomas gets the second, and Kim gets the third. However, on the sidelines, there is a man with a stick trying to both put them off and hook the boxes and throw them back in the water.
I would, if I were them, I would embrace the label hashtag lifeguard from hell.
It does sound like an Amazing Race team name.
Yeah. Yeah, you have Lucas and Brittany, the lifeguards from season 30, and then season 35, they're going to bring them back, and their rivals are going to be hashtag the lifeguards from hell, and they were lifeguards at a small swimming pool in Hell, Michigan.
So the lifeguard managed to grab one of Sahil's, but only to drop in the water again. Kim comes up empty, but Sahil gets to drop one back. Thomas nearly loses his box as he fishes up the steering column of the submarine. Kim gets her second one and decides to head back to the safe zone. The lifeguard walks alongside her, and she says that she thought, you can try it, but your stick is too short.
Yeah, just taunting the lifeguards from hell. I have a question. I know both of us are mainly zeroed in on people who are in the first group, but let's play the scenario that the mole was in the second group, which we know can only be Kim or Thomas. Who is in the molier position?
Kim by default, because she was opening boxes.
That's what I was thinking too. I was thinking, if I was the mole in the second group, even though I don't think any of those people are the mole, I'd want to be the person in control of opening the locks because Kim was completely unattended to for most of it. I think Thomas only helped her for 3 or 4 minutes out of that whole second half of the challenge.
I saw the argument that one of Kim's sabotages, if she was the mole here, would have been being really slow at opening the boxes because it took her 10 minutes to open 3 of them. But no money went missing. Each of those boxes had €350 worth of coins in them. And Rick confirmed that she opened 4 boxes. So she was probably just slow on it because it's a learning curve to open those sort of boxes anyway, and there are potentially 10 different codes for each box that you have to try. Obviously, they only got 7 of the arrows, so she only had 7 codes to try, but it's a slow process.
I like how Thomas had a very contestant-like confessional of telling the audience, hey, we know it's not a good idea to leave people unattended on the mole, but given the nature of the task, all three of us had to split up no matter what. We couldn't keep tabs on each other at all times. It's just, if the mole sabotages, they sabotage. Nothing you can do. There is no good solution to it.
Yeah, the better sabotage move from a mole perspective in this sub-challenge is to be the one opening the boxes. But the problem is, Kim didn't really sabotage in that position. There was one box that got back to the safe zone that wasn't opened, and that can easily be chalked down to the fact that they're a bitch to open. She didn't make any coins disappear, which is what I would have done as a mole in that position. I would have said, oh no, there was definitely not enough money in these boxes. We must have just got unlucky with fishing them up.
Open the codes and throw some coins in the water.
Well, just taking the largest value coin out. If there was a €250 coin in there, take a €250 coin out of there in every box. Oh no, we only earned €600. What a shame. Because I thought it was very interesting that Rick confirms at the end of the challenge how much money they could have earned for the 7 boxes that they would have had to fish up, which was 2,450, which is 7 350s. So that means there were €350 in each box, as I suspected.
Yeah, if the mole was in the second group, you think Rick would want to conceal that information.
This is what I mean when I say that Kim wouldn't necessarily be a palatable mole despite being a great character, because she didn't take the opportunity there if she's the mole. If she is the mole, I'm going to be disappointed because there are much better options in this season, character-wise, to be the mole, and plausibility-wise, to make the mole. But she's a great character, so I can't begrudge her. But she just isn't taking opportunities to mole if she is the mole here. So Thomas gets himself another one. Not that we can really see it, as his GoPro is very waterlogged. He's got about half of the screen covered by water by that point. Both lifeguards harass Thomas. He takes his boxes away from these awful annoying losers and apparently has something very important in his hands. They are highly motivated to piss him off. He leaves with another 2 boxes and hands them over to Kim while he goes back despite his hesitation about leaving her alone. Sahil then loses another box to a lifeguard and it drops in the water. Thomas's torch breaks, making it infinitely harder to get anything. And the lifeguard knocks Sahil's second box off his board again, just as he's trying to get it back to Thomas. Thomas returns with another box with 6 minutes left, just as Kim has opened a box to earn some mole coins, and she has 3 open by that point. And then Sahil hooks another one without his light working. He pedals back and asks the lifeguards to quit bothering him, given they've seen how much effort he's just put into this challenge. He just escapes, but doesn't manage to make it to the safe zone with his box in time. And Kim does open a 4th box just as time expires.
There are 2 really funny things towards the end of the challenge. One is when Sahil keeps losing stuff and Thomas goes back to Kim briefly, and Kim says, well, what's Sahil doing in there? And then Thomas says, it's just Sahil being Sahil. And then Sahil brags about getting the box without having any sort of light. And he says, what is my name? But he doesn't even bring the box back on time. He runs out of time. You can't really brag and showboat if you still don't get the money out of that box.
Do you think they would have been allowed to open the boxes in the submarine base?
Oh, if they had brought the arrows with them on the paddleboards?
Or just memorize codes?
That's true. They're only 3 digits.
That's what I would have done.
9, yeah.
Because you can easily remember 2 or 3 of those codes. The average person could easily remember 2 or 3 of those codes. So between the 3 of you, you can remember the 7 codes. I would have opened them on the paddleboards, taken the lights off them, and put them back in the water.
I think I've talked about on a podcast before, the Simpsons episode where Springfield gets divided into 2 different area codes.
I think you have.
Yeah, and they have a video to convince the town it's not a bad idea, and they say, well, a monkey can memorize 10 numbers. Are you dumber than a monkey? And here we have just 3 numbers for 7 different arrows? And 3 people just have to work together to memorize the 7 3-digit numbers? They should be able to manage with that. But I'm guessing just because of the brief time limit, they probably didn't think of that strategy.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing that I would have done if I was a contestant. I would have said, right, you memorize these two, I'll memorize three, and we'll just shout the codes to each other. Just try them, pocket the money, and that way we don't even have to worry about it. They can't steal the mole coins out of our pockets. And also, if you know full well that these boxes all contain €350, you can call out the mole if they are in your room, and if money has gone missing, and you know how many boxes they opened.
And I think Sahil constantly lying to people comes back to bite him here at the end of the challenge, because now everyone's working to actively lie to Sahil quite frequently. Because Kim and Thomas decide to tell Sahil that they earned 1,100 instead of 1,400 euros, which I don't know what the goal of that was, just to gauge his reaction, to see how confused he was if he was the mole, if they want to see just how knowledgeable he was about the challenge, or if they just want to toy with him.
I think if Kim had been left alone, she would have told Thomas and Sahil that it added up to €1,400 and put her €250 back in. I think Kim was going to use this as the cover for her €250.
Then it would be 1,350 instead of 1,400, which Rick would later announce.
Yeah, but I think Kim was relying on Rick not telling them exactly how much it was, and her saying, "Oh yeah, it's only $11.50," and then putting the €250 into the pot as well. I think Kim basically planned for this to work out differently, and it didn't, because Thomas was there watching like a hawk.
And then Thomas was very amused by Kim trolling Sahil that he was willing to play along with it. He was saying, I think they both just want to really confuse each other and work each other up. See if one of them cracks from the stupid deceptions.
So their coins do add up to €1,400, but they tell Sahil that it's 1,100. They could have got 2,450 with the arrows they got, but Rick confirms that they got €1,400 or 3,500 for this challenge. Thomas says afterwards that he's suspicious of Kim for being a player, not just a mole. And Sahil, yeah, Sahil's just being Sahil.
And then we get a very moley scene from everyone. He pulls Kim aside because he's determined to avenge Gila's death wish of finding out who took the €250, and he is convinced Kim has it. And he pulls Kim aside and says, I know you have the €250. Just tell me. I won't tell anybody else. And then Kim is on the verge of a nervous breakdown in her head, and she just spits out, well, if I had it, I would return it. And then everyone tells us in a confessional saying, I saw in her eyes, I knew she was lying to me. I'm thinking, how are you so certain Kim is lying? Have you picked up on a poker tell? Does she lick her lips when she lies? Do her ears prick up? How does everyone know with 100% certainty that Kim has the money? Because no one else has voiced that same certainty. There's that suspicion, but not 100% conviction on it.
I think it all boils down to the fact that they were in pairs for that challenge and that everyone else has admitted what they got out of the box. And they know that between Healer and Kim, one of them got two Yokers, one of them got the €250, and they just don't know who it was.
And then everyone is likely thinking, well, why would Gila lie about that after she's executed? I almost said evicted there because of Celebrity Big Brother, I'm assuming.
Do you think that they would have told this €250 story differently if Kim is the mole? I don't think they'd be drawing nearly as much attention to it.
If she was the mole, yeah. I think it would be buried a bit more. That's a huge cloud of suspicion to remind the audience week after week after week after week, because this is the third week in a row they've talked about it.
I think especially in the post-episode scene with them handing Healer the money, I don't think they would have shown who handed Healer the money if the mole was one of those people who got the money. I think they drew far too much attention to it being Kim for her to be the mole right now. And I might completely be wrong in 4 weeks. I may be sitting here in 4 weeks' time, well, hopefully a bit earlier than this in 4 weeks' time, but I may be sitting here in 4 weeks' time going, yeah, Kim's the mole, I guess, whatever. But I just can't see that in a month's time I'm going to be satisfied if Kim's the mole. That's what it boils down to, especially after this week. I think she had a bad week if she's the mole.
There were better opportunities for her to sabotage.
Yeah, she actively did not take an opportunity to sabotage when she was left on her own. And that is the problem. So Rick meets them at the bay on day 12. There are 4 boats that have life preservers attached to them with monetary amounts. Each boat must be arranged so that the lowest monetary amount is on the inside and the highest is on the outside of the beams. And each boat is worth the frankly odd amount of €435. There is a 5th boat where they can arrange logistics from. One person will be on the logistics boat, and the other 5 people will be on jet skis. And they've got 30 minutes to make it happen.
What's funny is we only have 2 challenges this week. The first challenge took 35 minutes of the episode. This second challenge, even though it's half an hour time limit instead of the 1 hour time limit of the previous challenge, we still only get about 10 minutes of airtime for this second challenge.
Yeah, the first challenge was long.
Yes, I wrote that in my notes thinking there's not going to be 3 challenges this week. And then as it wore on, I'm thinking we might barely get 2 challenges squeezed in this week. There could be a challenge during the quiz or right before the execution, but they do squeeze in a second challenge here, and I can see why they prefer the first challenge more because there was a lot more action in it. Rick narrated it much better. It was a lot easier to follow the linear progression of the challenge. Here, I'm sure it would have been a very, very fun challenge to experience, riding out on a jet ski. But I think it's one of those challenges that's a lot more fun for contestants than it is for the audience at home because it's 6 people doing everything at once, and that's tough to follow.
Yeah, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I've got barely any notes from this challenge, and I'm going to skip through this challenge pretty quickly because there's far more important things to talk about right after this challenge.
All I can really talk about is how everyone got, because 5 people have the same role of all being on the jet skis, retrieving the different amounts, and then everyone got picked to be leader. And then I can't remember who it was that pointed that out. Might have been Laetitia or Thomas. Might have been Laetitia who said it, saying, everyone really played it well to make himself the guy in control on the walkie-talkie.
Where would you want to be as a mole in this challenge? Do you think it matters?
It's tough because there's just so many moving parts to this challenge. You figure in the walkie-talkie because you're controlling a lot of the communication, and you have that puzzle board in front of you. But the players were also doing a pretty good job of keeping track of where the buoys were as well, and they were able to communicate with one another as well. It all didn't feed through everyone as much as it was made out to be.
I think the mole would want to be in the water. And I think in an ideal situation, the mole would want to be sneaking around to the boats and sabotaging them. But the mole didn't get the opportunity to do that. This team were far too well organised for the mole to actually be able to do the proper sabotage that should have been done in this challenge, which is take a 250 ring off, sling it into the ocean, because that burns the boat.
I'm sure there were a couple of subtle sabotages in this challenge. It didn't go perfectly. That was made clear.
No, but they were probably 10 seconds away from it going perfectly. And in them not doing it perfectly, that only lost them, €435.
That leads into another point. I don't have any notes other than everyone stumbling on the radio where he confuses the 250 ring with the 50 ring, where Thomas corrects him and he's like, "Oh, well, Frasier has the 250 ring and not you. Oh, shit." And then Laetitia limboing underneath the buoy arms.
Yeah, and Sahil nearly getting clotheslined by it later on as well.
Yeah. Jet skis are dangerous, ladies and gentlemen.
One point I am going to say, and this comes from a chat I was having with our friends over at the Trust Nobody podcast earlier, and it won't be the last time I mention them on this podcast, actually, but they had a bit of a problem with the €435 like I did, because I'm going to rehash a rant that I've done 3 weeks on the trot now, but they made it possible for the team to win an amount of money that they could not fulfill in the notes of the show. They do not have a €5 note. Therefore, why are you even putting it out there that there is a chance, albeit a chance as low as 40% in this challenge, that they are going to end up needing to round the money up or down?
It makes the group feel good. It makes the audience feel good. Like, oh, we'll give you these 5 extra euros.
It does, but there is an easier way to do it. And I mean, they've come up with an example that is a maximum of €2,000 for this challenge. And instead of the rings being 10, 25, 50, 100, and 250, make them 25, 50, 75, 100, and 250. Because that adds up to 500. It's a nice round amount for the pot. And no matter what they win, you can actually make it plausible in the notes of the show.
It would be easier logistically, yeah, and not have to specify, oh, because it was 322.7, I guess we got to round that up to 330.
Either that or, for the love of God, invent a €5 note. It's not difficult, guys. The notes this season are very pretty. You could easily come up with another colour that is the €5 note. And also, on the subject of the notes, we've not seen any negative notes this season. It goes back to something we've said time and time again this season about them being a bit more generous. I don't think we've seen a single negative note this season.
And this episode was another episode where their success rate was a very high percentage. There wasn't much money kept out of the pot this episode.
They were over 50% on this episode again.
They earned 50%?
Just over 50%, yeah. It was 2,710 of 5,240, so 51.7%.
Yeah, Vidum, each episode when we talk about it, they're usually hovering around 20% or 30% goes into the pot. 50% or higher for, what is this, the third week in a row? I think they've succeeded with that. It feels like we've had a lot of 50% or higher success rates, or close to it.
So yeah, last week was a smidge over 50% as well, because that was 3,550 of 7,000. So yeah, 50.7. Week 4 was just over a quarter. It was 1,750 of 6,000, plus 250 that Kim had ordered. So with a minute to go, everyone sent out to the last boat. They fail at the last second, just missing out on the last €250. The rate meets them back on the shore. They completed 3 boats for a total of €1,305. But because the season still hasn't built €5 notes into it, it is rounded up to 1,310 of 1,740 for the challenge, 2,710 of 5,240 for the episode, and €12,160 of 44,040 for the season so far.
I thought they were at 12,060.
Good spot in Mr. Saunders. We'll get to that in a second. 12,160 of 44,040 for the season so far, plus €250 that Kim has hoarded, which now puts them €20 off the amount won in Vidum Renaissance. Now, as you said, I thought they were on 12,060. I don't know if you spotted this, but they somehow messed the numbers up in this episode. And I'm not the only person to spot this, because they started the episode by saying that they were on 9,350, whereas at the end of last episode, and I've gone back and checked this, they were on 9,450. And our friends at Trust Nobody also spotted that, and we were having a little conversation about it on Twitter before the episode recording today. So production have fucked up, basically. The Wikipedia page on the Dutch wiki does say it's 12,060. It is actually 12,160. Unless €100 has gone missing, and we are going to find out where it's gone at the end of the season.
How do you not keep track of the money won on a season you're filming?
Exactly, because you know as well as I do, usually by this point in the season, I have messed up my maths somewhere. Usually I do have to go back and correct things. This season, I have not had to go back and correct things, because I have double-checked every single week. And I made sure that my number was correct, because when I was looking at the list of Dutch seasons to see what position they'd got to in terms of beating Renaissance and stuff, I saw it said 12,060, and I'm like, no, that's wrong. So I went back yesterday and double-checked my numbers were correct this week, and that they had ended last episode on 9,450. And when you get to the end of the first challenge, you see that, you know how it adds the money in. It starts at 9,350 this week, whereas it should be 9,450.
So do they get penalized in between episodes and they just didn't want to specify it on air? They just had no way to explain it from production?
I'll say this now. They need to be much more transparent about this if it was a penalty. And if the mole has stolen €100, that is a shit sabotage, because we've had no indication of it. It's only eagle-eyed viewers and people like me and people like Elga from Trust Nobody who actually take a note of all this money who spot these things.
Imagine if it was just some intern in production who caught on to something that happened 3 rounds prior and just came running into the room saying, hey, they didn't deserve this €100 that they earned back during the catapult challenge. You need to take that money away from them. Then production says, well, how do we explain that? We filmed that 3 episodes ago. Most viewers are going to forget about that.
I think it is cock-up rather than conspiracy. I think someone's just fucked up. So it's now time for the test. 20 questions on the identity and actions of the mole. Whoever knows least goes home, except for the mole who can never go home. Frasier, Laetitia, and Sahil still have exemptions to play, and they have 2 more rounds to play them. Frasier suspects everyone, and she has a lot of tunnel vision. That is the danger of the game, but there are far too many things that point to him right now. Everyone is a bit unsure. He would have to take a risk as he has no advantages left. He's still on Kim and Sahil, and daren't spread any more. In the beginning, Kim went on everyone, Sahil, Thomas and Frasier, but purely looking at the facts, Sahil is massively sabotaging this season. She is debating going all in on Sahil and plays her crystal. Thomas is on Kim and Sahil. Sahil is sabotaging in plain sight, and a life preserver was dropped in the ocean, costing them the final boat. He's gone half on Sahil and half on Kim. If he's right, he will stay in the season. If he's wrong, he will go home. Laetitia isn't strong on collecting information, so you just have to trust each other, and she decides to play her exemption. Sahil doesn't want to play his exemption because there's still only a 20% chance of going. He's keeping it for next week when the chance is 25%. Rick confirms that Laetitia is through and doesn't even need to take the test, confirming there are no more black exemptions in the season. I know you said this to me on Facebook earlier, but it did make me laugh. As soon as Sahil says, oh, there's only a 20% chance of going, you go,
Is it 20% if someone else uses the exemption who isn't the mole? I don't know, buddy. You may want to recheck your maths.
I think everyone pretty much knows that there are still 3 exemptions in the game. If you have an exemption right now and you don't play it, you have to assume the other 2 people are probably going to play it. Therefore, your chance of going home if neither of those people is the mole is 1 in 3. You are really gambling if you don't play that exemption now.
And I'm sure it's something they discussed or feel out from the other 2 people who have exemptions. Are you going to play it this round, or are you going to wait till last round when it's the last time you can play it?
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, if nobody had played their exemptions and everyone with exemptions had got through this week, there would have been a guaranteed elimination possibility next week. Because there would have been 2 people vulnerable, one of whom could have been the mole. It would have been a default elimination. So Kim gets a green screen and dances, everyone gets one and cries. Thomas also gets one, leaving Frasier and Sahil. Both have exemptions, but one of them will be leaving with it in their pockets. Sahil gets the red screen, meaning that Frasier is safe. Frasier says that he was a very annoying candidate who she wanted to go to the end with alongside everyone. He was so annoying in the game, but will be a friend for life.
And Frasier will be guaranteed a spot in the final 4, right?
She will indeed, because they have to play their exemptions next week, and she's the only one with one now. So she's guaranteed a spot in the final 4, and on top of that, next week they're giving her an exemption for the finale. And the reason that I point this out now is because when Rick is saying goodbye to Sahil, he says that he cannot remember a candidate going home with an exemption in their pocket before. Sahil says that he's happy to be the first. I can confirm Sahil is not the first, because it has happened when they did the exact same thing at Final 5 as they're doing this season in previous years. There is an example that I'm going to give you, which I'm not going to tell you which season it was because you've not seen it. But someone won the exemption for the finale at Final 5, just like someone's going to next week. I'm presuming it's Frasier. Then they had to defend it in another challenge, and they did. All they had to do was get through the Final 5 test, and they would be guaranteed a spot in the finale. And they did not get through the Final 5 test. They went home at Final 5 with an exemption for the finale in their pocket.
But they didn't have the chance to play their exemption, right? So is this the first time where somebody got executed? Is this the first time in Vidum where someone got executed with an exemption they could have played?
I'm not sure, is the honest answer. Bindles didn't know off the top of his head. But it's a very interesting situation, and I love it that they don't give out exemptions for the finale in the final 4. I like it that they still have to get through a test. It does mean if Frasier wins it next week that she's guaranteed a spot in the final 3, which is probably the worst option, actually. But also, I like it that there is a bit of jeopardy when it comes to winning these exemptions still. I will say this now, I think if Sahil and Laetitia and Frasier had got through this execution with their exemptions intact, I don't think they'd be giving away the exemption for the finale next week.
I would assume production would anticipate controversy that 3 people held on to their exemption so long, and a popular player could potentially go home by default. Not only a popular player, but that person could have gone straight ticket on the mole, but had to go home by default anyway.
Yeah, it would be a Josh situation.
Yeah, Josh situation.
Which is exactly what happened. It was him and whatever I called Splinter that week, Pikachu, I think it was. Him and Pikachu going head to head, both knowing who the mole was, both pretty much going full beans on Renee as mole, and then still he went home despite knowing who the mole was.
Yeah, you can't have people really go home like that on the mole. You can't have it be down to just a 1 versus 1 battle when there's 6 people left or 5 people left.
I think in future seasons they won't hand out as many exemptions at the same time because of this situation there.
How many rounds ago did they get these 3 exemptions? That was when there was 8 people left, right?
Week 4 it was, yeah.
Because it was a challenge when they were in pairs. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive that you had 2 people willing to risk it for 3 consecutive rounds and keep hanging on to their exemption.
It was final 9 because it was 4 people in pairs and Healer as the treasure on one side getting the black exemption. So it was episode 3.
Right. Forgot about that. 9.
So they've gone through 4 rounds without playing in the exemptions.
I can't think of any mole season where 3 people hung on to their exemption for 4 episodes, and then on the 4th episode, only 1 out of the 3 people play it, and then the other 2 say, "Oh no, I'm going to hang on to it till 5."
And you know as well as I do, they definitely made Fraser and Sahil the last 2 just for the drama. Fraser probably wasn't the bottom scorer on this test other than Sahil. They just did it for funsies, to stress them both out.
Yeah, if you're production, you just think no one's going to be that guts. You don't expect 3 people to A, survive that many executions in a row, and then B, hang on to all of those exemptions for this long. I think they were very relieved when one person played it and then the second person went home with it in their back pocket.
The obvious solution from a production standpoint to this issue would be to bring back specific weeks' exemptions. Say this has to be used on the first test, this has to be used on the second test. But that then negates the point of the black exemption. You couldn't do a black exemption and have week-specific exemptions. It's either or.
What's your preference? Week-specific exemptions or ones where you can hang on to it as long as you want?
I think I do prefer it where you can hang on to it. But from a production standpoint, you have to be so careful that you don't end up with a situation where you say, these have to be played by Final 5, and everyone apart from one person is exempt. That is a production nightmare.
Because it's essentially using the same rules as the hidden immunity idol from Survivor. Because it's with Survivor, you can tilt the game in your favor, where you just have a really close alliance with the other people who have idols, and say there are 3 idols in the game. All 3 of you can just hang on to your idols, vote together, and you get all the way to final 5 or final 4 together with all your idols. Here with the mole, it's so different. It's so much tougher because you can't tilt the game in your favor due to alliances. It's everyone's doing their own individual quizzes. You would just have to be insanely unlucky as a producer to enter a situation like that, because there's no way for the contestants to really rig it against specific people to ensure their target goes home.
Yeah, I don't think it came from a position of malice from production. I don't think they probably anticipated 3 people hanging on to their exemptions this long. But also, you do have to think about it when you have a challenge at Final 9 where 8 people could be exempt and 8 exemptions could be brought into the game.
Yeah, I guess the lesson from this point forward is, yes, it's very, very unlikely that everyone carries their exemptions to the final 5 and live, in the words of Austin Powers, they live very, very dangerously. But it could happen where you find yourself in that scenario. So I guess that's the lesson they got to learn from this season.
And from a production standpoint as well, if you're going into this knowing you've got a structure that requires an elimination every single week, it is entirely possible that 4 people could have exemptions to play at Final 5 and the person who doesn't is the mole. And therefore, you have to have a non-elimination, but that doesn't work for the structure of the season. You'd have to have a double at Final Five, which would be terrible.
Yeah, very odd situation.
From a production standpoint, it's a very stupid thing to do to introduce this many exemptions and have them all expire at Final Five, where there's a very real possibility that everyone could be exempt. But shifting it to Final Six probably wouldn't help, being perfectly honest about it, because then you'd still potentially have 5 people who are exempt and 1 person who isn't.
Yeah, you're just bumping it up by 1 round. A very Josh situation.
Yeah, there's no easy way. You just have to be sensible about how many exemptions you put into the game. And from my standpoint, I love a non-test specific one because it then means you can have stuff like the black exemption or any sort of twist that you want to. But 8 is far too many. Potentially 8. They were lucky that only 4 got introduced into the game. They were very, very unlucky that this sort of a situation could still have happened going into a Final Five test.
Yeah, because we said don't use your exemption at 9 or 8. Don't start thinking about it till 7. And then, depending how certain you are, how gutsy you are, then keep risking it. And it's incredible that 2 out of 3 people were willing to risk it for 5 consecutive executions.
I will be perfectly honest, I don't think I would have gambled.
I would have been too scared.
I think I probably would. Well, I would have cashed in by Final Six, definitely.
Yeah, I think I would have been spooked probably by 7.
Because the other element of the exemption structure is the fact that because you're exempt, you don't get any information on whether you're on the right track. It's great to be through another round and potentially be able to find clues and stuff, but you don't get any immediate feedback.
Unless your suspect goes home.
Well, yeah, that's the only situation. If your suspect goes home, like it did for anyone who suspected Sahil this week,
which was a lot of people.
Yeah, but it's not a perfect science. You don't have that immediate feedback of knowing whether you're at least more on the right track than someone else.
Yeah, Thomas, Kim, and everyone were all on Sahil. So that's really going to shake it up next week.
So, in the pool, for the first time since week 2, Logan has lost someone, albeit someone he didn't suspect, leaving him with just Everon and Thomas. I still have Laetitia, and Michelle has Fraser and Kim. This is the last week that any switches can be used, and Michelle and Logan still have theirs available. And I will warn you now, Mr. Saunders, Michelle has already been talking about potentially using hers this week. I don't know who won, because she did suspect Sahil. Nobody had Sahil at number 1 in first suspicions. Walter, Julian, and April Brad 15 had him at number 2, which was the highest. Bram and Matt had him at the lowest score, which was number 9. Nobody had him at number 10. With 5 people left, only 5 people have actually lost their first suspicions. 9 people still have their very last suspicions. Natalia is still leading with a score of 17, of which the minimum is 15. Maximum score is 36, and our lowest between the 3 of us is 23, which is still me. You and Michelle have 26 points currently. You both had Sahil at number 5, I believe. The overall ranking is now Kim at 2.35 out of 5, Fraser at 2.53, Averon at 3.18, Thomas at 3.35, and Laetitia at 3.59. Kim and Laetitia are still the only ones more suspicious to the 3 of us than the group as a whole. Kim by a tiny margin of less than 0.01, and Laetitia is above Thomas in our rankings. Kim with 31%, plus 5 from last week, Fraser 24%, plus 9 from last week, and Laetitia with 18% plus 1 from last week are all the top 3 in the Netherlands, and Averon with 17% plus 1, and Thomas with 10% minus 1 are the bottom 2 of the Dutch public. This week is the final week of our 2 suspicions. Next week, we do have to pin our colours to the mast and go down to just 1. Who are your 2?
Number 1 is Everyone. Number 2 is Laetitia.
Interesting.
Number 3 is Frasia. Number 4 is Kim. Number 5 is Thomas.
Yeah, mine haven't changed again. It's still Laetitia and Kim, mainly because Kim is just generally odd.
She's an odd person. She can't. No sane person acts like that.
Well, no, it's the same argument that I think I've made before, that it would be a disappointment if Kim is the mole, because she basically plays the same archetype that Renee played last year of being the older woman in the cast, being slightly kooky, being a bit out there, and the sort of person who you just go, oh no, it definitely can't be them. So it would be a shame if they do that twice on the trot. Laetitia still isn't on anyone's radar, which is very suspicious. And we've not seen a single person suspect her as number one all season, which is very suspicious to me. There is no way that with the little amount of money that Laetitia brings in each week, that nobody is talking about her being the mole.
Unless she just really comes off as really genuine in person and is just fooling the hell out of everybody.
Like I said, I think Laetitia is probably either our winner or mole. I don't know which one yet. I will be very, very pleased if it is mole, because she was my number one suspect in First Suspicions, and obviously she is my one team member left in the pool. But I think she would also be a much more palatable mole than Kim, especially. But I think she'd also be a much more palatable mole than Frasier, because, as you said, you just can't get your finger on her. And probably more than everyone as well. She's not the biggest personality in the group, but I think she is probably the personality that is most palatable if you were told that she's mole. That's the best way I can put it, I think. So it would be Laetitia, then Kim, and then Everon, Frasier, and then Thomas. Thomas by far is last for me, because he brings in so much money.
I have everyone and Laetitia just in their own tier of my top two suspects. There's a gap with just Frasier alone there, another big gap, and it's Kim and Thomas that I just am certain they're not the mole.
So you can do the Bothers Bar suspect list each week, run by the wonderful Daniel Peake at the link in our description. And I will also say, as a housekeeping note, we are due some De Mol België news at some point, probably in the next couple of weeks. I'm crossing everything that it isn't going to be a trailer and isn't going to be a premiere announcement, but First Suspicions will be returning for België in some form. I will hopefully be able to do the admin on that if I am away when it's starting, as will our pool, between me and Logan at least. And all being well, we will be back for België every week. The first episode, depending on when it is, maybe a little bit delayed, but we'll get into that when we actually know when the premiere is going to be. But yeah, any België news that comes out this week, we will almost invariably end up talking about next week on the podcast, if it comes out this week. Have you got anything else you want to say?
No, I think I'm going to go watch some short track speed skating and let the carnage ensue.
It's definitely Winter Olympics season. So thank you for listening to our V's to Mole 2022 recap. We'll be back next week to continue the hunt for the new mole in Albania. Don't forget you can contact us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, where we are RTV Warriors, or you can email us at contact@rtvwarriors.com. Logan is on Twitter at Loxikawaki, and I'm MJ Harmstone. Thank you as always to Marika for the subtitles, and we'll see you next week.
Peace out and just chill till the next flavoring.